Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews. My name is Alyssa, and this is my review for Star Trek Picard Season 2, Episode 9, Hide and Seek. The standard spoiler warning applies if you have not seen up to the end of this episode. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we're almost to the finish line. Almost there. Almost done with this struggle to get through the season, though I will say that this week's episode was fine. It was better than some of the previous week's episodes. In fact, it's probably one of the better ones that they've had in a while overall. At least this one had one coherent plot. And a plot that, for the most part, was needed, although the whole flashback thing is a completely unnecessary storyline. Doesn't add anything meaningful to Jean-Luc Picard's character, but I'll get into that a little bit more later on in this review. But yeah, overall it's fine. I mean, they're kind of building up to the inevitable Girardi becoming the new Borg Queen thing, as I talked about weeks ago, that was likely where we were heading and how much I would like that. And I kind of like what they did with that. I kind of like that Girardi and the Borg Queen are going to kind of merge into one being. I think that's kind of cool. Yeah, so it's fine. But the horrendous writing of season 2 continues, though. In this episode, we still have characters with plot convenient abilities or plot convenient holograms being invented out of nowhere, and just bad writing overall. Characters being placed in places they really shouldn't be, such as Talon, and an awful, awful villain in Dr. Soong. Alright, so that's my overview. Let's go ahead and get into some of the details. Alright, let's start with Jean-Luc's storyline. And there's two layers, of course, to his storyline. There's the present day, and then there's the flashbacks. And I'll start with the present day, and honestly, I think the whole existence of the present day storyline is just as a launching point for the flashbacks, because the present day storyline is really nothing. Like, it's just Picard and Talon running through these tunnels and running away from a two-dimensional villain, and that's it. There really isn't much to it. And as I alluded to in the intro, Talon really doesn't need to be there. I don't understand why she's there. I thought she was there in the show to protect Renee Picard. I guess she's grown attached to Jean-Luc and she's decided to come help him or whatever. But there's no story flow. Once again, there's no good flow with character movements. So it's as if characters are on a chessboard and then they are taken off the chessboard and put away somewhere for an episode and then just kind of clunked right back down on the chessboard in a different place. Like, there's no good flow. Like, where was Talon last week? And then all of a sudden she's just back from wherever the hell she was. And the same thing with Dr. Soong, although he was in it last week, but in previous episodes he just kind of disappears and just reappears. And there's no good flow at all, no good movement between the episodes. And as for the two-dimensional villain, Dr. Soong to me is on the same level as Osira from season 3 of Discovery. My brother and I have both talked about how Osira was such a horrible two-dimensional villain, and we always use her as an example of a really bad villain in Star Trek. And honestly, I put Dr. Soong on that same level. With all due respect to the great Brent Spiner, who of course I love and admire, I really feel that this role was just an excuse to give him something to do without forcing him to sit through the data makeup, which he said he's never going to do again. And I really believe that this should have been an entirely different character, having nothing to do with the Soongs, and then you can expand on what he does. It doesn't have to be something related to genetic experiments or clones or androids or anything like that. You could have done a lot of different things with the character, and you could have written him as multi-dimensional and written him with clear motivation and written him in a way that we give a shit about this character. Like, we should care about this character, and I don't. I don't care about this character at all. And I alluded to this last week as well, but the show is trying to trick me into caring about characters simply by casting familiar faces. They've done this with Dr. Soong, Dr. Soong's daughter, and also Talon as well. And I'm not fooled. I don't fall for it. You actually have to write three-dimensional characters with clear motivations and reasons for me to care about them. Simply casting familiar faces does not automatically make me care about the characters, especially when they're very poorly written. And it has nothing to do with the actors. I'm sure the actress who plays Talon / Laris, she's fine. Of course, Brent Spiner I always love. And Issa Bromas, what's her name? Yeah, she's good too. So it's nothing to do with the actors. It's just very poorly written, flat characters. So then we get into the flashbacks, and there's two levels of this that I can talk about. There is the fact that they're pointless, and also very poorly structured, going back to a couple episodes ago. And what does this add to Picard's character, really? I had gotten the impression before that they were trying to tell us an origin story for why Picard keeps his distance from people, and why he was like that all throughout the Next Generation, and why he was keeping his distance from Laris at the beginning of this season. Is it though? So I guess we just are going to connect the dots and say that his mom hanging himself is what caused that behavior, or maybe they will connect the dots a little bit more next week. I don't know. But did we need that? I mean, as I've said before, like, I just assumed, that's just how he is. Like, I didn't need an explanation to why he's like that. And I'm actually not connecting the dots there. So I actually don't know what this adds to his character, like what the point of it is. I'm not trying to, minimize, a traumatic event happening to a character, such as his mom hanging herself, and him finding her, and also the guilt associated with him blaming himself for that happening. I don't want to minimize that. I just don't think it was needed for this character, and I don't think it really adds anything, and clearly it's retconned. And you can retcon in a story if it's meaningful, and there's a point to it, and it really adds something to the character overall, and I really don't think it does. I think that they're just trying to, wow us with how traumatic Jean-Luc's past was, but I don't know, and it is retconned, and I don't know if I really buy it. Like, this has always been the case. I don't know. Now, as for the structure of this flashback storyline, I talked about this a couple episodes ago in episode 7 when we were first introduced to it. How we had those two separate storylines in one episode for Picard, each with its own beginning, conflict, and somewhat resolution, and how the flashback sequences were just abruptly cut off. And now that I have seen the resolution to that, I realize how little sense that whole scene from episode 7, that whole storyline from episode 7, how little sense it really made. So the whole point of Talon going into his mind was because physically, he was fine. He's just mentally, something is stopping him from coming out of his coma. So it's like a Padme situation where he's dying of sadness and she needs to go in and help him. But how did she help him when she didn't resolve anything? Like, in order for that to make sense, this whole thing would have had to be resolved back in that episode where Picard would have had to face the fact that his mom hung herself and he blamed himself for that hanging. He would have needed, by the show's own logic, he would have needed to have faced that and come to that resolution in that episode. But no, we want to save this for episode 9. So we're just going to abruptly cut it off and we're going to say Picard, he's good enough. Like, just remembering that his mom had mental illness, that's good enough. He's fine now, totally healthy now. Even though supposedly the whole reason he was still in the coma was because of that mental block, because of that trauma. So that should have been resolved at the time. I wouldn't care if it was in episode 7 or episode 9, but it really needed to all be together in one episode for it to make any sense whatsoever. Although, honestly, as I said before, I don't think we needed this flashback sequence at all. So not a fan. Not a fan at all. I'm glad that it's over with, and I hope we don't need to spend any more time on this. All right, let me talk a little bit about the Jurati and Borg Queen of it all before I get into some of the other characters that I want to touch on as well. Yeah, I do like the kind of conflict between the Jurati and the Borg Queen. I mean, it touches a little bit on the old trope of, trying to get my body back, trying to wrestle control of the body sort of thing. But it subverts that trope in that the solution isn't Jurati just takes over. The solution is, hey, let's share this body and let's merge into a new being, which I thought was kind of interesting. That is actually interesting writing. That was kind of cool. So I like that resolution to this storyline. But it really was the Jurati and Borg Queen face-off that was most interesting to me. The Borg Queen making these military dudes. By the way, where those military dudes come from? Like, I didn't really understand that in last week's episode. Making them into Borg and following the two-dimensional villain around to chase Picard around in the tunnels. That was stupid. And then the Eleanor hologram thing, that was dumb too. But actually, I've said what I need to say about Jurati and the Borg Queen. That was fine. I liked it. It was probably the best part of this episode. Moving on now to Raffi and Seven and this Eleanor hologram. So the Jurati says to the Borg Queen, oh, so everybody who comes on this ship can be made into a hologram, any hologram we want. And this is true all of a sudden because I just said it. It is a line of dialogue that we just inserted in here, so now this is true. Again, plot convenience. This is the plot convenient hologram. And then I want to jump to the end when Raffi has the little talk with the Eleanor hologram, and the Eleanor hologram conveniently has the memories of Eleanor up into his death. How? No, he does not. He does not have those memories. Just plot convenience and plot contrivance. I'm just so tired of it in this season. So tired of it. And once again, I will say, I do not care about this imaginary Raffi and Eleanor relationship that they just invented in season 2 and told me about it, even though I have never seen any evidence of it prior to season 2, so I don't buy it, and I'm not emotionally invested in it. Now, Seven, I think, has been one of the strong points of the season, although they've really stopped using her a lot this season. I really did appreciate the little line they dropped in there about how she tried to join Starfleet after Voyager, which of course she did. Of course she would try to join Starfleet, and Starfleet wasn't having it because she is a former Borg, and she mentioned Janeway. I love the name drop of Janeway. Janeway went to bat for her, but to no success. I think Starfleet was being pretty obtuse to not let 7 and 9 in the Starfleet. And it's not that I don't buy it. Like, I think that's actually within Starfleet's character, if I'm being perfectly honest. But I do think that that's obtuse of them to deny someone joining Starfleet who essentially was a member of Starfleet for the past 4 years and proved herself to be a valuable member of the crew, just because she used to be a Borg. And when she's already proven that she's past that, so I don't like Starfleet's decision on that, but it makes sense. I'm okay with it, and I do love that line that was thrown in there. The thing I don't like about Seven in this episode is, like, conveniently, to be saved, she gets her implants back. Wouldn't she have gotten those back anyway once the timeline is restored? Like, I don't know. That was kind of weird to me. But I love Seven. You know what? I would love to see a 7 of 9 spinoff show, and hopefully they would write it better than they've written this season. That could be really interesting. That could be fun. I would actually really enjoy that quite a lot. Now, I don't know. I don't have much to say about the Rios thing, but let me talk again about the fact that the characters don't give a shit about the timeline. And, you know, I've been unfairly blaming the characters, but it's really the writers. The writers don't give a shit about the timeline and how the characters treat the timeline. Exhibit A, we have a 7 of 9 saying that these are no longer humans, they're Borg, so we have to treat them as such. Which makes sense for her to say that, except for the fact that they are 21st century human beings that in the original timeline did not become Borg and lived long lives, and maybe had children, and maybe who's had more children, and maybe did some important things. Like, they don't care! Like, they don't care about the timeline at all. So you can't just dismiss it, oh, they're Borg now. No, because in the original timeline, they were not Borg. So they don't care. So the goal should be to unborg them, but they don't care. And the writers don't care. It's mainly because it would be hard for them to do, to unborg them, and it'd be very complicated. So the writers are just taking the shortcut and going, okay, so these people are Borg. They're just Borg now, and timeline doesn't matter. Also, no one says anything to Rios. Hey, why the fuck did you bring this woman and her son onto the ship? Why? Everyone just acts like it's normal. Oh, okay, cool. There's people from the 21st century on the La Sorrento. That's awesome. Like, nobody cares. Like, my God. So, I actually think that's all I really need to say. I'm probably forgetting something really important. Like I did a couple weeks ago when I forgot to mention the fact that Rios brought the doctor and her son onto the La Sorrento. But let me wrap this up. I'll go ahead and give my rating out of 10. So this week, my rating out of 10, with 1 being the lowest possible score, 10 being the highest possible score, for Season 2, Episode 9 of Star Trek Picard. 5? I give it a 5. I actually thought 6. I don't know. It gets the lower point because, you know, this season sucks. So, but 5, yeah, is better than any previous episode. So, sure, 5. All right, that does it for this week's review of Star Trek Picard. Join me for one more review of Star Trek Picard next week, but before I do that, 2 things are happening. So this Saturday at 6 o'clock West Coast time, 9 o'clock East Coast time, I'm going to do a live discussion with my brother Mark from Enchantment of Eternity. I don't know why I'm singing, probably because I'm really tired, but that's going to be a preview discussion on Strange New Worlds, which starts next week. And I'll go ahead and drop the link to that discussion in the description below of this video, so you can check that out. And then next week I will begin my coverage of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Yay! Maybe it'll be a good Star Trek show that I can talk about. And I am actually going to release my review for the season premiere of Star Trek Strange New Worlds first, so that'll be out Thursday evening, Thursday night. Then my Star Trek Picard Season 2 finale review will be late Thursday night, maybe early into the Friday mornings. This is different from what I originally said I was going to do, because when there was a crossover between Star Trek Discovery and Picard, I said, well, I'm going to do the show that is already on first and the new premiering show second. And I said that I was going to do that for Strange New Worlds and Picard as well. But since Picard sucks so much, and I much rather talk about Strange New Worlds, I'm going to do my review for Strange New Worlds first. So it'll be out around this time that this review got uploaded on Thursday evening. And then the finale review for Star Trek Picard will be late Thursday night, Friday morning, something like that. All right, thank you guys so much. If you have not already, please subscribe, and hit that like button, ring the bell for the notification, do all that great stuff, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.